There are about 70 people globally, and it's their job to the front end, not counting the 70 engineers. There's a front end recruitment sales force that recruits independent software vendors. That might be you, I'm not sure. Okay, you might have a product, an application that you want to publish into the marketplace, whether it's the Azure Marketplace or AppSource, right? And when you join the ISV Success Program, there are benefits that come with that program. The first year, there's a certain amount of benefits that you get. If you make your application, here's the key, transactable in that first year, then I think you qualify for another tier called expanded benefits, okay? I don't do that side. What I do is the side that's more interesting to you folks, which is I meet with the ISVs who come into the program who want to take their applications and make them transactable so that they can make money. That's what the team does. And so what I'm going to show you tonight is how would you take your SaaS, your managed application, your container, your VM, whatever it is, whatever you've developed, your intellectual property in your application, how do you take that to the marketplace and become transactable? Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into that. And I'm going to give you guys the same presentation that in the last year I've given to about 200 ISVs. Our team just in the Americas has done over 5,000 ISVs in 1 year to give you a scope of how big the application is and how deep the scope is. So typically what I'll do with the customer is I'll get on the line with them and I'll say, hey, let's talk about what your application is, okay? And the key to this slide is, are you publishing in your own tenant or are you publishing in the customer's tenant? If you're publishing in your own tenant, it's going to be a software, it's going to be a SaaS, it's software as a service. If you're going to be publishing into the customer's tenant, you've got 4 other options that you can do. You can do container, you can do VM, you can do Azure application, and you can do Azure managed app, okay? And so I'll sit down with them, I'll say, talk to me about where you want to deploy your application. Do you want to manage your application? Do you want it to be in your customer's tenant? If you want it to be in your customer's tenant, how do you want to lock the rights down to your application if it's a managed application, okay? And so from there, once we've identified that, what we'll see on the right-hand side is how that billing and how that monetization lines up depending on what your application and which model that you're using is. So if it's software as a service, you'll see that you can do per user, flat rate, 1 to 3 years annual terms, or metered billing. Actually, you can stack metered billing on top of those things too. So a good example of that would be, I had one customer that was on another continent. He had developed a way to do solar devices that were charging batteries in the field somewhere in Africa. And what his SaaS application did was it reached down and it tracked the consumption of those batteries in the field. And then what his application was doing was it was telling that end user client how they could manage their hardware devices to get the greatest amount of energy during the day, so that they could maximize what was going on. But each time it was querying those devices, it was picking up an event, and then he was billing beyond the monthly flat rate, so that every time that event was checked, it went into a database in his application. And once an hour, the API would query that from the Azure Marketplace, and then it would go ahead and charge for that based off of whatever the terms were that were set up in the contract on the sale of the application. Does that make sense to kind of summarize how that SaaS piece works? If you're looking at who manages the solution, and it's a container, a virtual machine, an application, or a managed app, once you've identified that and you look at how you're going to be billing over here, you'll notice underneath virtual machine, it's per CPU or something else, but it's not necessarily per user, right? Because it's a different entity on the back end. If you look at containers, it's the same kind of thinking. When you get to Azure managed applications, that's the one that's uniquely, in my opinion, great for the monthly flat rate plus the metered bill. Okay, I see that a lot. 80% of the ISVs who come to the Azure Marketplace bring a SaaS offering. Only 20% are doing that bottom tier and publishing it to the customer's tenant. Okay? Just FYI. So now once we get to that point in the conversation, I'll say to the developer, hey, let's go take a look at what you need to know, and it's all heavily documented. Okay, so what I want to do at this stage, just because you're recording this, is I'm going to stick it in the chat so that you'll have the link afterwards. Is that where I want to put it, Scott? That way you'll be able to pull it. From a documentation perspective, there are two things that I like to drive people towards. One, I call this the technical side of life, right? That's you guys. But if you've got a CIO that you're on the line with, Microsoft built this site. It's the same information. You'll notice SaaS accelerator, the managed app, the container, the virtual machine, but it's written from the customer's journey. See, there's that same chart we were looking at. But when you come down to here, I'll just click on SaaS. You see the SaaS technical course. You'll see the publisher experience, the customer's experience. But if you notice, you're only seeing the videos and the PDFs, not the step-by-step. Because it's a higher level for people who just want to understand the process, but they don't need the individual nuts and bolts underneath, right? As part of the program, if you scroll down, I better grab that page for you. As part of the program, when you come to the bottom of this page, you're going to find the webinars and the office hours. So basically, if you go into the webinars page, you're going to see future facing webinars and past recorded webinars with the people who wrote the program. The office hours are great because if you got a specific question and you could wait a few days, just go to the office hours and you can ask the actual architect at Microsoft who runs the program for the quickest, best as far as the answer, right? Now, if you are, let's go back. Any questions so far? Am I losing? Is everybody on board with where we're at? Or any questions? Barry? Okay. So now, if you're a publisher, and I thought I had this open. Hold on. Yeah. So when you come into ISV Success, you're a partner with Microsoft. You're qualified on the front end. You have to have your tax profile set up. You go through all that business front end stuff. Once you pass all that, you're granted access through your tenant to the Microsoft Partner Center. Okay. Now, whoever owns it has to go into the profile in the top right corner. Whoever has access to the Partner Center, like anything else at Microsoft, you have to allocate the correct permissions so that, for example, in this case, Marketplace offers is going to show up when that end user logs in. Okay. So here is where you would build your offer. Okay. These are just demos that you're looking at here. Okay. So if I take, I'm going to start with this one, then I'm going to come out of it because I want you to see what it does. By default, when they go in to create their offer, the publishing status is going to be turned off. There's going to be no green check mark, no green bar, no nothing. It's going to be black, right? But what you see when you unhide the details is the menu on the left here. As you answer those questions, the check marks on the right start to light up. Okay. When you get all the way to publisher sign off, because you've answered all of this stuff correctly, you can do a preview and subscribe to your offer. So what that means is you can go in and you can set up testers within your organization to look at your offer in the marketplace, whether it's in the Azure or the AppSource marketplace, before it goes live. So that means if you want to look at the language, the drawings, the videos that you're explaining your product with, and you want to get feedback internally from your group, they can look at it before you hit publish. Once you press the go live button, it goes to certification, which is a different team than the technical people like myself who sit in on the front end. There's a manual checker and there's an automated checker. And essentially what they're looking for is the application that you want to publish into the marketplace, does it do what you say it's going to do? That's really what they're looking for. And they're going to run some other compliance checks on it. And if they find any issues in it, they're going to contact you as the owner of that subscription and that partner. And they're going to say, hey, Scott, these 5 things have to be fixed. Fix these, hit and resubmit, and let's get this thing moving. Okay? Because Microsoft wants you to be consuming resources. Now, for the privilege of publishing your app in AppSource or in Azure, Microsoft charges a 3% commission, which is really very low. So the way that that works is if the example that they give, and they changed my playbook on me recently, so I'm not going to try to dig that one out. If my application costs $80 a month, right? I submit it, now it's transactable. Transactable means that I'm using Microsoft to do the billing for me. That's the definition of transactable. At the end of the month, I'm going to get paid $77.50, and Microsoft's going to take $2.50 for their 3% commission charge. Okay. Now, if I wanted Jack to sell on my behalf, inside the Partner Center, I can go up into Marketplace offers and I can create private offers and I can do multi-party. And there's one other option in there that I can show you in just a second. So it's MSP and then it's multi-party. That's what it is. And essentially what happens is it's going to create a URL that they can use to get back to my offer, but they can mark it up with whatever commission that they want. So in the case that I gave you, if they mark it up and say they're going to sell the product for $100 a month, they get the $20 commission. Microsoft takes its $250, and you as the publisher get paid your $77.50. That's how that works on the sales side, right? So if you ever get to the place where you got an application that you want to publish, it's really pretty clean and it's very useful because it gets you out of billing, right? You're completely out of that. And so what happens when you go into the marketplace in Azure, you're going to have to log in with your subscription. So they're just going to bill it to you through your subscription. And then that way, not you, the customer. And that way, as an ISV, you're just out of all that hassle, right? So in the case of this one, if you look, you'll see that he answered this question right here. Yes, I want Microsoft to do the billing for me. If he said no, these menu choices would change. So if you have an application and you want it to get published, but you don't want Microsoft to do the billing for you, you can go into the partner portal, say no. You'll still be able to create your offer. It'll still get published, but you'll be responsible for the billing and the collection of whatever you're doing with your customer on the back end. Any questions on that?
They still get a percentage of support? Is it different?
No, because there's no transaction going on. It's like an advertisement.
Does that classify it as like bring your own license?
You can do a bring your own license, yes. But no, that's a little bit different because you can do a bring your own license and make it transact. Okay, it's possible to do that. Right? You see that, I think, mostly on the managed app side, right? So if you look here, what you'll see, oh, let me go back up again. You'll notice that it's going to run you through some questions. I'd like Microsoft to sell on my behalf and give you your listing options. You go down through here, you can answer the question, do you want to do the license management or do you want Microsoft to do the license management? Now, customer leads, you can connect it to your own CRM or an HTTPS endpoint. So if you don't see Marketo, Salesforce, Dynamics 365, because you don't use that, you have your own homegrown system, you can enter in your HTTPS endpoint, tie it back into your homegrown CRM, and you can pull all those leads that come into the marketplace. So on a contact me page, if somebody says, hey, I want to know more about your product, if you have that configured, it's going to show up in your CRM and you can mark it through your Salesforce that way. Okay. There is a consulting offer, right? So if ACO wanted to have a presence in the marketplace, which I don't know if they do or not, there is a consulting service there. They can create that offer. Something you might want to look at. I don't know. It's not transactable at this point in time. Down the road, not underneath NDA. It's targeted, but it's not released yet. They are looking to get that done, but it's not out there yet. I can say that much. So I'm not giving you dates because I don't know them. So if I look at this one, you'll notice that basically you're filling in what your offer name is. You have to write in what you want the search result summary to be. Always you can roll over those. Notice it says a single sentence. So if you don't make this a sentence with a period on the end and it goes to validation, I'll kick it back to you. That's a little squirrely thing, right? So
You did enough repetition.
yeah. So you'll just basically fill this in, the privacy link. If you want to use the Microsoft pre-written privacy statement, you can go pull that here, right? You can stick it in and you don't have to write your own privacy statement. You can use the can from Microsoft. It's going to ask you to put in your product information, your support contacts, all that stuff. The preview audience is where you would go in and you would add in the email addresses. Now, preview audience may not work on this way. It's going to work. Here it is. You can see here's these folks are granted the ability to go in and see this before it goes all the way through publishing. Okay, that's what this page is. Now, in the technical configuration, this is where it's a little more interesting. Okay, so in the technical configuration, you're going to have a landing page and you're going to have a connection webhook. Okay, now what this is doing, and I'll show this to you really over here a little bit more, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to go super deep on this other than to show you the highlights on it. Okay, if I go to, for example, SaaS, and I should see they haven't changed it on me. I don't know. Looks like they put it here. I thought it's something they reorganized this. This is where you're going to see your landing page and your webhook. Now, there's a pre-built SaaS accelerator that's housed on GitHub that has the code, right? So essentially, all you have to do is follow the directions that are in the documentation. It's going to go over to GitHub. It's going to show you the code. You're going to copy the code. And if you want, there's 2 default places on the bottom where I think you can add in a tenant ID and one other thing that it asks for. So copy the code to a notepad, add those 2 lines at the bottom of the notepad. When you go back into the Azure CLI, you run that script, and that's going to create the landing page, and it's going to create the webhook that you need on this side. Now, Microsoft does not require that you use those links. If you want to create your own landing page and you want to build out your own webhook, that's fine, not an issue. However, if you run the script as it's written from GitHub, you'll be up and running in 20 minutes. Super fast, super easy. Okay. Now, as a SaaS offering, not a managed, not a container, not a virtual machine, a SaaS offer is the only offer that you can be in AppSource and in the Azure Marketplace. Okay. You can only do that for that one offer. If you are a managed application, the virtual machine or container offer, you'll show up in the Azure Marketplace. You won't show up in AppSource. Now, folks in the room who are old Azure guys, have you ever seen this before? I hadn't until I got on this program. Didn't even know it existed. Does it look familiar to you? It's the combination of both AppSource and Azure Marketplace. So, so there's really 3, but there's really 2, but this is kind of the combination of the third, right? And if you go down and look, you can see browse all apps and you'll see the categories. Now, if you go in here and you look, you'll notice that here's that BYOL you were talking about a few minutes ago, right? If you go into the portal itself, and you go into the marketplace, you're probably all very familiar with this marketplace, right?
I'm not sure I ever searched outside of this.
right? So there's a whole nother marketplace that's apps, right? That's app source. Typically, those are gonna be more office add-ins, that kind of stuff. That way I look at it, your technical people are gonna be in this marketplace, your business people are looking at app source. That's the truth, right? Now, did you ever notice when you were in here, SaaS, virtual machine, Azure application? Did you ever notice that before? Those are the offers that we're talking about that you build out as a publisher. Okay, so if I just take the first one by default, this publisher built this out. This is what you're building in the partner portal. Maybe to home run that for you, kind of visualize that. So when you go through in the partner portal and you have to fill out those plans and pricing, and you have to add in your drawings and your videos and everything else, this is what you're building out on the back end in the partner portal. Just to make that clear. All right, let's go back over here. All right, okay, that's what I wanted to say. Now, the private, let's just stay on the flow here. So the SaaS accelerator, which you'll find with all the documentation here, it will talk about how you install it and all that kind of stuff. Here's the latest script. See where it takes me to, yeah. And here's the script that I'm talking about. Okay, so literally all you're gonna do is you're gonna copy this over. You're gonna put in your web app name. You're gonna put in your resource group name. You have to have a valid email address. If you don't have a valid email address, the script won't properly execute. Because the other thing that this builds is an admin portal. Now, the admin portal is a web-based portal where you can see if Derek has subscribed to my app. Because the webhook is going to populate that in the admin portal. It's going to show me who has subscribed and with which plan that they've done, right? And depending on how I want to set it up, if I want to automatically accept that subscription, or if I want to say, let me manually review it before I accept it, I can do that in the admin portal that the SaaS accelerator is going to build out. The two rows that I was referring to were right here, the tenant ID and the Azure subscription ID. So what I would do is I would copy these two rows and I would add them into here at the bottom. And then I would run the script from the Azure CLI. And in about 20 minutes, as long as you make a change on that web app name, the resource group name, publisher admin, all that kind of stuff, you're going to be totally fine. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to send this link the chat session so that you'll have it. Right. Now, remember we talked about the SaaS, we talked about, lost my thought, give me 1 second. Okay, yeah. So if I come into, give me 1 second. This the way that you appear if you have a SaaS offering is when you're in the partner portal, you're going to have to complete. Leave it open, I hope. Yes. I think it's up here in the properties. You see that primary category is blockchain? Well, if you have a SaaS offering and you want to appear in both marketplaces, you got to have two categories. And this link will give you the two tables that have the categories and the subcategories. So essentially what you do is you're going to add a second category. Here, you see that add an extra category, and you're going to pull another subcategory. And as the SaaS offering, that's going to cause you, when you go to full publish, to be seen in both marketplaces, as well as in the Azure Marketplace that I showed you a few minutes ago. Okay, now in the offer listing, I think we already touched base on all that. Let's just fill all that in. We talked about preview audience. We talked about the technical configuration. Now, in the plan overviews, this is where you build your plans. Flat rate, user, whatever it is, ad billing, however it goes. If you come into here, you're going to go in and answer those questions that are required for that plan in order to be able to make it make it happen. You can choose what markets that you want to be published in, like globally speaking. You'll configure your pricing. You'll choose your pricing model. It'll tell you, because you're in the SaaS offering, that you want flat rate or per user rate, what your terms are. You can add that in. You cannot bill a year in advance. Some companies come to me and say, hey, I want to collect the whole 12 months on the front end. Can't do it that way. You can say, I'm charging $96,000 a year, but it's going to go to $8,000 a month. It's going to collect it every month, right?
If you adjust your region to include like, UK,
You do have a way to upload a spreadsheet that has currency. Is that where you're going?
well, more around does it change anything with like, the compliance checks they do? Do they make sure you comply with GDPR?
Not that I'm aware of, not that I'm aware of. Now, again, that goes to the compliance team. So the compliance team may come back and say, hey, you got to deal with GDP or whatever it is, right? A lot of times we'll get into conversations with people, we'll think, are you going to do a multi-tenant approach, right? You got a SaaS offering, is it going to be a multi-tenant SaaS offering, all that kind of stuff. Now, if you decide that you want to be part of the ISP program and you apply and you get accepted, which, let me see if I saved it. I think I tried to this week. Let's see if it's at the bottom.
You do have a couple in there.
Hey, let's just do it this way. I think if I go here, that should find it. If you go to here, you'll find it. Okay, this is where you will subscribe to go ahead and get set up, and it'll walk you through how to enroll and what your benefits summary are, right? Now, when it talks about the AI tech consults and it talks about meeting with the team of people like me, you get 3, once you're approved, you get 3 1-hour sessions with our team. And those sessions are typically architecture review, architecture design, and publishing. Architecture review, we tell people on the front end, you're going to be presenting your drawings and your application to us. We'll run you through a series of questions just off the top of our head that we think is applicable in your scenario. If we don't think we need a design session, we'll tell you on the call, hey, here's what we think you could do to make it a better application. Think about this. If we look at it and we think, nope, it's good, or Derek's the AI guy and I'm not, I want to set up a design session as a second ticket. We'll create a second ticket on the fly. We'll route it to the team lead. The team lead will look at whoever that person is with the expertise and route it to that knowledge expert for the best design session. Then once it goes through the design session, it jumps into what you're getting tonight, which is the marketplace publication session, right? And it doesn't come to you at any cost. It's totally free, right? So that's kind of what that is. Let's see what else I can show you. Again, I'm not on that side. I only do the technical side. We talked about categories. Talked about that. So we didn't get into, if you go back to marketplace offers. Now, when you create an offer, here are your choices. So depending on what we agree upon, what you're going to publish, you're going to come in here and create your offer based off the template that's in here. Okay. And you'll notice here's the consulting service offer, right? So you can build that out if you want. Underneath private offers, in a private offer, you have to have a public offer first because the private offer dovetails off the public offer. So I'm going to sell St. Thomas Hospital a PACS application, and I'm going to sell St. Thomas for $20,000 a month. However, there's a mom and pop clinic down in Franklin that's standalone. They want the same application and they can only afford $1,000. That's a private offer, right? So with a private offer, I can go in and I can say, hey, you're going to pay a different price than St. Thomas is going to pay. And for the privilege of that, I need your billing account ID from your subscription, Because what's gonna happen, and I don't know if you guys have ever noticed this, again, I'm an architect, I never paid it. Have you ever seen this before? I just never noticed it. And I won't have any in here because I'm not a publisher, so it'll be blank when you see it. So if I go to the marketplace, you ever notice the private marketplace and the private offer management? So what happens is, as a publisher, you give me your billing ID. When I create your private offer, I'm going to put your billing ID in that private offer. And then me as the customer, I'm going to go into the marketplace and my subscription to the private marketplace, and I'm going to see your published offer with those confidential prices that I can subscribe to through my tenant. And St. Thomas doesn't know that they're paying 10 times more than I'm paying for my small Franklin thing. That's how the game works, if you've never seen that before. And it's very popular with startups because in the startup world, a lot of people can't afford much, right? Or you need a few trial customers who are willing to prove your application so you can build your momentum. And that's where the private offers really comes in. Now, in private offer management, if I've got private offers out there and I'm the publisher and I'm in my tenant, I'm going to see those ones that have been accepted and I can manage them from within there. Okay, so that's where that is. Any questions? Interesting, not interesting? I don't know.
So I will say that it is hilarious. I've never even seen this. It had been impressive, but, and I was even familiar with this concept of the private offers because a lot of startup accelerator companies do this when they're lining up a startup with like a first buyer.
Yeah,
But I didn't actually.
yeah, I didn't even know. It didn't register, right? Let me look back over here. Okay, so we talked about private offers. Okay, doing business, bonus content. Okay, reporting and insights. They've added that in now. So when you're in the partner portal, there's a place where you can go in and do it's going to be over here, I think. But I don't have it on mine. You would see your reports if you were a publisher, so you can see your transactions, you can see your customers, you can see all that. I don't have that right because I'm a tech guy, right? Now, interestingly enough, it is an AI world, right? So notice anything up here? Oh, look, they just added this in about 2 months ago. And if you'll notice, those line up to these tiles. So in this particular case where we're talking about marketplace publications, so if I want to say, let's see if this works. Now, with the managed application, a lot of times people want to deploy their IP to a VM. Okay, as part of their application. You wouldn't charge for your intellectual property through the managed application. You bundle it and you hide the VM offer inside the managed application offer. There's a check mark at the bottom when you're building your managed application offer that says, do you have a VM offer? And that VM offer is hidden in the regular marketplace, but the marketplace sees it and you tie that back in. That's how you can add your intellectual property. You'll see how great it is. It'll give you everything that you want to know. Right? Now, again, the documentation is fantastic from the perspective of, everything that you ever want to know, whether it's a container offering, and you go down through here, every single thing is broken out step by step. Okay. In a container offering, you're going to have a CNAV bundle and the artifacts, right? Because you've got to deliver that up in there so that the container offer can be built out in the publisher's subscription. You're going to have ARM templates. You're going to do the JSON. You're going to have it all in there, but it's all very clearly spelled out. Doing business in the marketplace, a lot of people will say to me, hey, how do I get better visibility in the marketplace? And there is, in fact, they've redone this page, so I'm kind of stumbling around just a little bit. I usually just go up to my saved bookmarks page. And when I come into here, what I find is marketing best practices. When I come to here, I'll find the playbook for Azure Marketplace and AppSource best practices. Okay. Now, what's interesting here is you also have your offer listing best practices. So when you go through here, it's going to show you, hey, what's the best offer name? What's the best offer description, logos, all the things when you're building out your offer. What are the best practices for that? Right. Then the question is, hey, I want to get bumped up in the marketplace for visibility. How do I do that? Here's the documentation on how to improve your score so that you can get better visibility. Okay. And then finally, we talked about configure lead management. The steps are going to be there as well. Trying to think, what am I not covering if you were a publisher that I haven't thought about so far?
I mean, I do have a question kind of related to this. So in the companies that you've worked with to get apps published, how many of them are you actually seeing where they have like lead generation driven from just people searching the market?
So I can't answer that because I'm not privy to that.
Okay.
I get that question every week. And I have to say, I don't know. That's what
It seems crazy.
that.
Like
Right.
every tech is Google or is search in the marketplace, like,
I can say this too. I had a customer this year that came back to me a couple months later and said, we've already done our first million. Okay. I can say that. You can't tell you who the customer was or any of that other stuff. But the volume is there. Like I said, we met with 5,000 customers in the US and Canada and Latin America and South America alone in the last year. And we're adding more and more people to meet those customers all the time because the volume is coming. And that's where, in my opinion, whether it's AWS or whether it's Google, that's where those clouds are going to make the money. Since there, right?
And it is interesting because you do end up with companies that have like a required spend with Azure, like they've made,
They get there. I got you.
And so that's why a lot of people end up putting their stuff on marketplaces so they can transact through there because there's already guaranteed budget. There's already all that.
And Microsoft has something called Mac, right? So Mac is, I'm an MSP, and I'm committed that I'm going to spend $100,000 this year on Azure. If I do that spend, I'm going to get a certain percentage refund at the end of the year. Right? That's called MAC. And so when they're involved with these kinds of transactions, you can see why it's interesting to them because they want to get their discount back, right? On behalf of their customers. And they're going to keep the money. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in tech sales right now. That's the Q4 hero is that required Azure spend.
Exactly. Let me think what else. So we've kind of covered the marketplaces, we've covered the offers, we've covered the publishing stuff. What have we not covered that you guys might have interest in? Anything? I know it's kind of a lot on the short end. I see a lot of people writing Copilot integrated applications. That's probably one of the biggest things that we see right now. And we're actively hunting those. We track those. So when somebody calls in, part of the section that we do with them is, does your product include AI? If it includes AI, we escalate it either to someone inside of our team that can walk you the next step, or if need be in your specialized customer, you may get a handoff somewhere else. Right? Fun little story, unrelated to asking about touching. So last year I worked on allowed to say that, through Microsoft Tech for Social Impact. is an Indian company. And their founder is a lady who has spoken on India's Tech Talks. She came to the philanthropy department. She had an idea. Microsoft funded her. Her idea was in India. The stat is unbelievable. It's something like once an hour in India, a college student commits suicide because of the cultural pressures of 16. And she's a psychologist. So she went and she hired a third-party developers company to develop an app that would run on the phone that would walk people through basically psych consults on a 6-week psych consult, right? So if you're at risk for suicide, she basically had just like what you would get at the doctor. You'd be run through a series of questions and then it would come back to you and it would give you some advice. She was handed to me because a year ago, maybe 15 months ago, they were running into a 3-week hurdle. They had about 3,000 people on the street that were using their app. They were losing their students 3 weeks in. They were losing their students because they were using bots, but they were not using ChatGPT. So basically I coached her through, hey, go back, rewrite that app, put ChatGPT into it. And I think the last time I heard from her, they're now up to 100,000 users. And their goal is to prevent suicide. And what they've done is they've built in triggers so that if you get certain responses back, and it's much more interactive than the old bot was, right? It will flag someone to say that person's at risk. It's a fantastic app because if you think about, they're doing it in India, but if you're a refugee from Gaza, a refugee from Ukraine, you're at risk, all they really have to do is add those languages to the app, take it global, and they can make a real true global impact. It's absolutely stunning. But that is an application that could come in the marketplace, but right now they're not making a charge. So it's all funded and branded and everything else. So just a fun example of good stuff that's happening. Other questions? Anything else?
I guess one more just to ask, so you said that the majority of people onboarding this are choosing SaaS. Do you believe that's because of they develop in a bubble, they build servers in a way to like, probably a lot of people aren't starting out wanting to build.
I think it's because they're coders and it's easier for them to build a multi-tenanted application, house it in their tenant, figure out their cost, build that into the base of what they sell into the end user, and then manage it as a multi-tenanted application from the front end on their subscription. I think that's what it is. That's just my opinion. And you did hit on something there. They do SaaS. It'll come to me. It's a great question. You see a lot of, one thing that we didn't talk about is this. From a managed application perspective, I want to be in Marketplace. In the managed application option, if you go in here and you look at managed application deployment options, what you're going to find is, should say deployment option. Tell me, there's deployment modes. Let's see if it'll come here. Should. They've changed this. I don't like what they've done with it. They changed it just in like the last 2 weeks. Let me go back, hold on.
It is, because I know like Power Apps was getting a lot of traction for a while. I don't know if that's still interesting.
It does, yes. CRM integration with CRM. Now, here's what I wanted you to see. The publisher access mode. So let's say that you deploy your IP into a resource within your resource group. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's a container registry, or maybe it's a VM, right? Here's your publishing into your customer's tenant. It'd be any of those assets that are in that managed resource group. And typically what's going to happen is you'll see from the left side to the right side. Now, as of August of last year, we built in the capability at Microsoft for you as the publisher to choose how much control your customer has over your app. So if I go down a little bit, hopefully it's going to show it to you. I want to see if they've redone this. Hold on. That's what I'm really looking for. That's what I want. So when you're in the publisher's partner portal and you're building out a managed application, remember the index on the left-hand side where you had to answer your questions? Well, one of those in the managed application is, how do you want to control who has access to your application? It's two questions. One question is, how much access does the publisher have? How much access does the customer have? And really, the first one is the publisher. It's basically yes or no. Second one's basically yes or no for customer. What that looks like here is in the bottom of that quartile, the publisher has full control over his IP of the resource in the resource group in the customer's subscription, right? If you answer the question so that both people do, it's an open app. You can also say, nope, only the customer has access to the IP because the customer owns it. It's in their tenant. That's the way I built it. But in the publisher's portal, there's a place for just in time. So when the publisher selects just in time, he can go back to the customer and say, open it up for me to do Friday afternoon upgrades, whatever it is, right? And there's a new option. It's totally locked. Once it's deployed, the publisher can't get to it and the customer can't get to it. That's just something I want you to know, because in the managed application world, typically it's just publisher managed.
We ran into the dirty locked app a bunch with like managed applications where technically the publisher has access, but they won't. Like you call support, they're like, yeah.
We don't know. They don't have permission
Yeah,
probably
that's
to
not
deal
bad.
with it either, right? Exactly. That was a beautiful thing when it came out last fall. It really opened up a lot of doors for a lot of our companies. So, with that, I think I've covered all the high level stuff. I'm not going to go super double deep wherever you need to go in terms of coding, that kind of stuff. More of an overview so that if you ever want to publish something, you know how to do it. Just go out to ISO.
I'm just curious, what would you use the lockdown feature? Like, what would you configure it like that? Can you?
Maybe in a healthcare app where a healthcare client says, I can't risk my employees or the publisher making changes to the app.
I would also say potentially not even that, I would say anything that's got some type of secret sauce of coding. Cisco's gonna do it for a lot of their virtual applications. A lot of your virtual backups appliances are all going to be locked because you're buying that service. So again, if you're buying something, that's more where that locked app's gonna come, because they don't want you to get in there and find their secret and then you're unlocking it or whatever. It's more of that conversational piece of that side is what I've seen in the past.
Or if someone should have made a container. And
But off the subject, landing zones. With your customers, are they using landing zones? I think that's a no. So what I've seen in the last couple of years is a lot of companies rushed to the cloud to get their assets up and running. But they didn't do the due diligence to build out landing zones first and deploy those assets into the landing zones. And if you're not familiar with landing zones, you can just go into Azure. I think you can just do landing zones and it should come up. Manage landing zones. So I'm seeing a little bit of a groundswell where companies are going back and using landing zones because you build the policies at the tenant management level, and then you deploy the resources into the landing zones. A lot of the guys are architects, you already know what I'm talking about. I just think a lot of companies didn't do it right the first time around. So if you're a consultant, that might be an opportunity to go back and say, hey, can we take a look at what we've done with landing zones and see how much time?
We've had a lot of people say this is how we want to do it. Let's think on this for a minute.
Yeah. This is interesting. I haven't even seen that before. That's new, whatever that is. Yeah, that's what the marketplace looks like. So take a look at that if you're not familiar with it. It's good stuff. Okay, I think that's it, unless you guys got any other questions. I don't want to keep you all night. Okay,
I would definitely thank you.
Yeah, control.
I hope that was great.